everyone, namaste, welcome back to my channel. This is Amisha Singh Chauhan, and if you're new here and you're looking for something fun, dark and mysterious, then you're at the right place. So do not forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon so that every time I'm here with a new case, you'll get to know about it. So today we will be talking about James Patrick Bulger's case. And if you're someone who hasn't heard about this case yet, then I will give a short disclaimer that this case consists of child abuse, and if you're someone who cannot digest it, then I suggest you to not watch this video. So yes, let's start with the case. James Bulger was born on 16th of March 1990, and he was such an amazing kid. He would hop around. Like, I remember this one interview where the mother recalls that ever since he started walking, he would never really walk, he would hop around, and he had this aura that he would make people laugh. He was very affectionate, really kind for his age. So yes, on 12th of February 1993, just a month before his third birthday, he along with his mother Dennis Bulger, now Dennis Fergus, they decided to go to the shopping center in Merseyside, England, where they belonged from. Now, this shopping center, which was New Strands in Merseyside, was huge. It had almost like 100 different stores. And from the morning onwards, they were shopping around. And actually, she remembers, like Dennis remembers, that it was one of the first times that James was outside in public and not in his stroller, but he was walking himself. So the entire day, he was walking by his mom like a big boy. And then around 3:40 p.m. that afternoon on 12th of February, they go to a butcher store, which was their last stop before they would head back home. Now, over here, all this while, like I said, he was walking around, so she had his hands like in her hand. And over there in the butcher store, she dropped his hand just for a minute, actually lesser than that, to put her hand inside her purse, take out some money, hand it over to the cashier, then take her stuffs back and put it in her bag. And then when she tried to grab his hand, she realized that James wasn't there. So she immediately got into this panic mode and she started looking around the mall, looking around the shopping center. She took help from the employee. She went to the help desk. There was an announcement made, but nobody knew where James was. Very soon, the police were contacted, and since it was a child missing case, so the police got to the scene very quick. And within short period of time, there were almost 100 people looking for James in and around the shopping center. Now, this was on 12th of February 1993. Until now, they have no clue as to where James is. And you all know that in missing cases, especially when it comes to children, then every second, every hour means a lot. Like anything could have happened to James. Now, somewhere in the wee hours of 13th of February, the police get a surveillance footage. Now, in this footage, like they had a lot of CCTV footages. Now, from these CCTV footages, they could make out that around 3:41 p.m. on 12th of February, James walked out alone out of the butcher store. Now, around 3:42 on a different CCTV footage, they could see James along with two other boys. Now, these boys were much older than James. Now, they looked like boys from 13 to 15 years of age, probably 16 to the max. Now, immediately the police started investigating a lot of teenagers from the town. It is said that almost 60 teenage boys were investigated as to interviewed for this case. But all of these 60 teenagers were innocent and they had no role in James Bulger's case. Now, since the police had no lead, had no clue as to where James was, they decided to do a press conference along with James's parents, that were Dennis and Ralph. Now, in this press conference, they spoke about the CCTV footage and they requested the public, if they had any idea, then they should come up front and tell the police about it. But then again, unfortunately, on 13th of February, they had no lead. Now, on 14th of February, in a village called Walton, almost 2 miles away from the shopping center where James had disappeared, 2 teenagers found a body of a young child on the railway tracks. Now, they immediately got into a hysterical mode. Like, I can't even imagine the kind of trauma they might have suffered after seeing it. And they went to a nearest police station, which was around 300 meters from the railway tracks. They told the cops over there everything they saw, and immediately the cops went to the scene. Then James's parents, Ralph and Dennis, were called to recognize the body, but it is said that they were not in a state of mind where they could have done that. So it was James's uncle who recognized the body. So the case immediately transformed from finding out where James was to finding the murderers of James. Now, the police had no lead except the CCTV footage they had retrieved from the shopping center where James was seen last time with 2 teenage boys. Now, again, they held a press conference. They gave out all the information they had from finding James's body. Now, talking about James's body, one glance at it and you could make out that the body was cut into halves because a train train ran over it. But it wouldn't have taken you a lot of time to recognize that there were other injuries as well. After the autopsy, it was concluded that James had almost 42 injuries, and they were so severe that they could not decide that which injury caused his death. But it is said that he died before the train got to him. Another thing over here to be mentioned is that he had 10 fractures, 10 skull fractures, which is believed that it happened because a heavy iron bar was dropped on his head, and later on after the investigation it came up that it was a railway fish plate, that is what they call, which was almost 10 kgs, which was dropped on his head and which caused 10 skull fractures to James. Now the police were also suspecting sexual abuse because when James's body was found, it was naked from the waist down. Now what happens over here is that they receive a call from this woman who claims that she can recognize one of the boys as John Venables. Now this John Venables she could recognize because she was friends with John's mother Suzanne, and she also knew that on 12th of February he had skipped school with his other friend, which later on was recognized as Robert Thompson. Now, when the police got to know about this information, they were caught off kilter because they were not really expecting that they would get this lead of 10-year-olds. Like, they were expecting these two boys to be somewhere in their teenage years, but here they had two 10-year-old boys. So initially they had this thing in their mind that, they would just go there and question them and then get them out of the suspicion list of this case. And that was done. They made two teams, and these two teams separately went to Robert Thompson's house and the other team went to John Venables' house. When they went over there, the kind of reaction they got from these two kids when asked questions related to James's murder and disappearance, the reaction just gave them out, and the police could recognize that something was wrong over here with these two kids, and they knew what had happened with James Bulger. So immediately these two boys were gotten in the custody and they were taken to two different police stations so as to investigate separately. Now before I begin with investigation and trial, I would give a little background of these two kids. They both came from distorted families. Not really distorted when it comes to John Venables' house, but the family environment was not really good or healthy for both of these kids. Robert Thompson's mother was a single mother. She was also an alcoholic, and Robert Thompson had 6 other siblings, including him. There were 7 kids, and they were having a lot of financial issues. It is also said that a lot of his older siblings would bully the younger ones, and he would often go outside shoplifting. Whereas on the other hand, John Venables had 2 other siblings, and both of these siblings needed special attention because they had learning disabilities. And oftentimes John Venables would get bullied by kids at his school or in the neighborhood, and he would always act out. Like this one time he even tried to strangulate a kid using a ruler, and it took 2 teachers to get him out of the situation. Eventually he was suspended from his old school, and then he transferred to another school where he met Robert Thompson after he had to go down a grade. Now they became instant buddies, and they would often skip school, they would go out shoplifting and end up doing nasty stuff. Now on 12th of February, they decided to again skip their school and they did some shoplifting, and then they realized that shoplifting was boring, so they decided to abduct a child. And before they got to James, they were actually trying to abduct another 2-year-old boy, but thankfully the mother saw this and immediately grabbed her baby and left the scene. Now after that, around 1:40 p.m. they saw James, and it was John Venables' idea to abduct James. Now back to the investigation and trial. During the investigation, like I said, both of them were investigated separately, and the way they were reacting to this investigation was completely different. Like on one hand, John Venables was just breaking down, he would cry, throw fits, and on the other hand, Robert Thompson, he was just being very poised and very defensive and trying to put this strong image of his. Like he would reply by saying that you don't know what happened, I was there, you just keep your mouth shut, things like that. He was very defensive this entire time, and it took a lot of efforts from the police's side to break these kids and to make them tell the truth. Now, other than their confessions, they also had other physical and forensic evidences. For example, the bruise on James's right side of his cheek, it matched Robert Thompson's shoes. Also, there was blood found on these boys' shoes, and there were a lot of DNA of James's found on their clothes. Now, these investigation and the confession they got from these kids were taken to the trial. Now, on the first day of trial, trial, the people were so mad at these kids, and by the way, their identity was not released and they were still called as Child A and Child B. Probably it was Robert Thompson and John Venables respectively. Now on the first day of the trial, there were around 500 people waiting for them outside the court, and the people were really mad. Like, you remember I mentioned that there were 60 teenagers who were investigated before John and Robert. One of these innocent teenagers had to actually leave the town because of these people, because they thought that he was the culprit. Anyways, during the trial, they were tried as an adult. Yes, they were 10 years old, but because of the intensity and severity of the crime they had committed, they were tried as an adult. The lead prosecution counsel successfully rebutted the principle of dolia incapax, according to which children cannot be legally held responsible for their actions. Now, these two boys were charged for murder, abduction, and attempted abduction. Attempted abduction for that 2-year-old which they were trying to abduct, but the mother got in the picture. Now, initially, they denied these charges. They were like, nope, we did not do it. It is also said that during the trial, these boys were not allowed to speak, or they did not speak. Something like this happened. So the clips, like the video clips and the audio clips from the investigation, from the interview, was used against them. There was jury present. Now very soon the jurors found them guilty and convicted them of all accused charges. Now they were sentenced for 8 years in prison. Now prison is a very heavy term over here. It was practically a private hospital for privileged boys. The reason why I'm saying this is because they had their own rooms, they had television, computers, they could decorate their room as much as they could and however they wanted to. They had also the exposure to go outside. Yes, within a year of their punishment, they were allowed to go outside of the rehabilitation center that they were assorted to, and they could go for shopping, they could go to McDonald's, they would often play a lot of sports and things like that. They had one-to-one teachers as well. So yes, like I said, it was more of a private hostel for privileged boys. It kind of looked like that these boys were getting rewarded for what they had done to James. I don't know. It is my opinion again. Back to the case, they were initially sentenced for 8 years, but after Denny's appeal, it was increased to 10 years. Now, around 280,000 people signed a petition to increase the 10-year sentence of these two boys, and successfully by the government, this sentence was increased to 15 years. And obviously the court did not like it. So they deducted it back to the original sentence, and that was 10 years. Now in 1999, solicitors of these two boys, they went to the European Court of Human Rights and they appealed that the trial conducted in 1993 was not fair for the boys, as they were tried as an adults and they had various other clauses as well. Now the sentence was reduced, after which, now in June 2001, after 6 months reviewing by a parole board, it was concluded that these two boys were no more dangerous for the society, so they would be let out outside in the world with new identities. Along with new identity, they also had a lifelong license. Now in this lifelong license, they had some clauses. For example, John Venables and Robert Thompson were not allowed to contact each other under no circumstances. Also, they were not allowed to contact the Bulger family members or any of the relatives of the victim. Other than that, they were not allowed to go to Merseyside of England, and also under no circumstances could they reveal their true identity, their real identity, to anyone. Now after this, they came outside in the world as a new personality, as a new individual. We don't know much about Robert Thompson, and hopefully he's doing fair and hasn't gotten into trouble, because again there is no news about him. But John Venables is completely another story altogether. Now in September of 2008, John Venables was arrested on suspicion of affray, but the charges were dropped after he said that he got into the trouble for self-defense. Now until this time, it is said that he was doing drugs, he was doing cocaine, he was abusing alcohol, and he was even dating a lot of underage girls. Some believe that he was trying to relive his adolescence. Now also on 2 different occasions, he revealed his true identity to people. Yes, that was a severe violation of the clause from the lifelong license. Now on 2nd of March 2010, a news broke out that John Venables was put behind the bars again because he had violated, he had severely violated a clause from his lifelong license. When the media and people questioned the the authorities as to what violation he had done. The authorities were like, it's none of your business. But eventually on 21st of June 2010, it came out that John Venables had been charged with possession of child pornography, which he pled guilty to, and he was sentenced of 2 years in prison. Now, after completing 2 years in prison, he was still kept for a long time because the authorities were not sure and they were not really trusting him because they doubted that he would go out again and would not tell anyone about his true identity. And we all know getting a new identity is very expensive. But then again, in 2017, John Venables was recalled to the prison again for possession of child abuse imagery. Now, on 7th of February 2018, he pleaded guilty for that, for which he was sentenced for 3 years and 4 months in jail. Now, he had possession of 392 category A child pornography, 148 of category B, and 630 of category C. Now, if you don't know about these category A, B, C, the intensity of child pornography increases from C to B to A, and no matter what ranking you give to these pornographic images, I think it's still wrong. Like, no matter what ranking it is, it's wrong. Period. That. Anyways, back in 2020, last year in September, he appealed for bail, which was declined. So most probably he's still behind the bars with his new identity. At least that's what we've been told. And he's still serving his punishment. Well, that is all we know about John Venables and James Patrick Bulger's case. One of the things that I really want to mention over here and give my opinion over here is for the fact that these kids, as in John Venables and Robert Thompson, they were never really punished for their actions. I mean, like I said about the hostel / prison / rehabilitation center, like they were given the best of best things. They had computer, they had internet, they had video games, they could go outside. It is also said that John Venables even went to Scandinavia for a vacation. So what I'm saying over here is that in my opinion, they were not really punished for their actions. Now, another thing is that so many times the authorities have been requested to live the anonymity to tell their real identity to the world. Like, imagine you have no idea that these people could be your neighbors, they could be your co-workers. I mean, there are so many circumstances, and I believe that as a public, people over there have the right to know the real identity of these people. I mean, who cares? I think people deserve to know the real identity of these people. And even back in the court during the trial period, the judge decided to reveal their identity to media and to public was because he himself believed that the welfare of the public was more as compared to these people's if they would have kept their anonymity. Anyways, this is my opinion. I would love to know yours. Do you think that they were punished in the right way? Do you think they were rewarded? And also, do you think that they deserve to have their anonymity, especially John Venables? We could ignore Robert Thompson for a second. I'm not defending him, but I'm just saying, like, John Venables has proved himself to be a reckless man, and he's kind of laughing at everybody's face, especially the authorities' face over there in Britain. Well, do comment down your opinions or your suggestions or any additional information you have regarding this case. That's all for today, and I hope that you take care of yourself. Until then, bye-bye.